The millionaire fired a waitress after humiliating her in public. But days later, he was stunned to see his son having dinner with her at a luxury restaurant. Samantha Matthews tucked a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear, balancing 3 plates along her forearm with practiced ease. 6 months at the opulent Chicago hotel's 5-star restaurant had taught her how to navigate the maze of white linen tables without a misstep. "Order up for table 12, she whispered to herself, gliding between chairs with the grace that had earned her a spot on the main floor. Despite her youth and lack of connections, the restaurant hummed with the low murmur of expensive conversations. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over businessmen in tailored suits and women draped in jewelry that cost more than Samantha's yearly rent. She'd learned to make herself nearly invisible as she served them, nothing more than a pair of hands that appeared and disappeared with perfect timing. Tonight was different. The stakes were higher. The private section hosted what her manager had described as the most important dinner of the quarter, Vincent Aldridge. The hotel's owner and Chicago's most ruthless real estate magnate was entertaining potential investors from Dubai. The future of the Aldridge empire apparently hung in the balance. "Don't screw this up," her supervisor had hissed during pre-shift. "Mr. Aldridge specifically requested our best staff." Samantha checked her watch. In 3 hours, she'd be home, counting her tips at the kitchen table while her grandmother took her evening medication. Just 3 more hours of smiling through clenched teeth at men who wouldn't even remember her face tomorrow. She approached table 12 with practiced deference. "Your braised short ribs." "Sir," she announced quietly, lowering the plate before a white-haired gentleman who barely acknowledged her existence. 2 more plates to go. She turned slightly to serve Mr. Aldridge himself. That's when it happened. A busboy rushed past, clipping Samantha's elbow just as she extended the plate. Her balance wavered. Her ankle twisted beneath her. The crimson Cabernet in Mr. Aldridge's half-full glass teetered, then toppled with slow-motion inevitability. The wine erupted across the pristine white tablecloth, splashing directly onto Vincent Aldridge's bespoke suit jacket. Dark stains blossomed across the light gray fabric like blood seeping through gauze. The restaurant fell silent. Forks hovered mid-air. Conversations died mid-sentence. Vincent Aldridge rose slowly from his chair. At 62, he stood ramrod straight, his silver hair impeccably styled, his face a study in controlled fury. He was not a large man, but his presence filled the space like a gathering storm. "You incompetent girl," he said, each word precise and cutting. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Samantha's throat closed. "Sir, I'm so sorry. Sorry." His laugh was cold and sharp. "Sorry doesn't clean my $3,000 suit. Sorry doesn't erase the impression you've just made on my guests." She reached for a napkin, desperate to help, but he stepped back as if her touch might contaminate him. "People like you," Vincent continued, his voice rising to ensure the entire restaurant could hear his verdict, "are born to serve, and you can't even manage that properly." He flicked his gaze to the restaurant manager who had materialized at his side. "Get her out of my sight. She's finished here." The manager nodded quickly. "Of course, Mr. Aldridge. Samantha, turn in your apron now." As if in a nightmare, Samantha felt herself being ushered toward the kitchen, aware of 50 pairs of eyes tracking her shame. Only as the kitchen doors swung closed behind her did she notice a young man who had entered the restaurant during the commotion. He stood near the host stand, watching the scene with a furrowed brow and troubled eyes. The rain had started by the time Samantha exited through the service door, her few belongings stuffed into her backpack. No goodbyes, no chance to explain, just the cold finality of "clear out your locker" and "don't expect a reference." The Chicago wind cut through her thin jacket as she trudged toward the L station, tears mingling with raindrops on her cheeks. Her mind raced with calculations. Rent due in 2 weeks, her grandmother's medicine costing $320 a month, the heating bill already past due. The humiliation burned, but the panic was worse. Her grandmother, the woman who had taken her in when her mother died, depended on her completely now. "Way to go, Sam," she muttered, wiping her face with her sleeve. "One stupid mistake and—" Her apartment was a 30-minute train ride from downtown's gleaming towers to the neighborhood where buildings sagged with resignation. Entering the 2-bedroom walk-up, Samantha pasted on a smile before turning the key. "That you, sweetheart?" Her grandmother's voice called from the small living room where she spent most days now. Oxygen tank, her constant companion. "It's me, Gran," Samantha answered, hanging her wet jacket on the hook by the door. Eleanor Matthews looked up from her crossword puzzle, reading glasses perched on her nose. One look at her granddaughter's face told her everything. "Oh, honey, what happened?" Samantha collapsed onto the worn couch beside her grandmother, the story spilling out between sobs. Eleanor's lined hand stroked Samantha's hair, just as she had done when Samantha was a child waking from nightmares. "Aldridge?" Eleanor repeated the name softly. Something flickered across her weathered face. Recognition, concern. But it vanished so quickly Samantha couldn't be sure. "I'll find something else," Samantha promised, straightening up and wiping her eyes. "I've got some savings. We'll be okay for a few weeks at least." Eleanor studied her granddaughter's face. At 25, Samantha had her mother's determination etched into every feature. The same quiet dignity, the same stubborn chin, but there was something else there too. Something Eleanor recognized from another face, one she had spent decades trying to forget. "Some men," Eleanor said carefully, "believe their money makes them important, that it gives them the right to treat others like they're disposable." She squeezed Samantha's hand. "Your mother knew better, and so do you." Samantha nodded, though her chest still felt hollow with humiliation. "I'll start looking for a new job tomorrow." Later, after her grandmother had gone to bed, Samantha sat at their tiny kitchen table, scrolling through job listings on her laptop. The glow of the screen illuminated the worry lines forming around her eyes. She didn't notice Eleanor watching from the hallway, didn't see her grandmother's hand clutching a faded photograph hidden in the pocket of her robe. A photograph of a smiling young woman standing beside a handsome man with familiar eyes that had today glared at Samantha with such contempt, not knowing he was looking at his own flesh and blood. 3 days after the wine incident, Samantha sat cross-legged on her couch, surrounded by a fortress of rejection emails. The morning's job hunt had yielded the same results as the previous 2 days. Nothing. No callbacks, no interviews, not even a courtesy response from most places. "This makes no sense," she muttered, rubbing her temples. Restaurants that had been actively hiring suddenly had no positions available the moment she mentioned her previous employer. One manager had even winced when she said she'd worked at the Opulent. Her phone buzzed with a text from her friend Zoe. "Any luck today?" Samantha typed back. "It's like I'm blacklisted." The 3 dots appeared. Then, "Aldridge owns half the fancy spots downtown. Word travels fast." The realization hit her like a cold wave. Vincent Aldridge wasn't just punishing her with a humiliating dismissal. He was making sure she couldn't work anywhere else in Chicago's high-end restaurant scene. Her 5 years of culinary school and mountains of student debt suddenly felt like a cruel joke. The apartment was quiet except for the gentle hiss of her grandmother's oxygen machine. Eleanor had been sleeping more lately, her energy fading like an old Polaroid. The doctor had suggested a new treatment, but the insurance wouldn't cover it. Another $600 they didn't have. Samantha's eyes drifted to the classifieds: barista, retail, call center, jobs that would barely cover rent, let alone medication. The buzzer rang, startling her out of her spiral. She wasn't expecting anyone. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Samantha Matthews." The voice was male, confident but gentle. "Who's asking?" "My name is Liam. I was at the Opulent the other night. I'd like to talk to you if that's okay." Samantha hesitated. "About what?" "About a job opportunity," he replied. "And to apologize." Curiosity overrode caution. She buzzed him in. 2 minutes later, she opened the door to find a man about her age standing in the hallway, tall, with sandy brown hair and kind eyes, dressed in a casual button-down and jeans that probably cost more than her monthly rent. There was something vaguely familiar about him. "You were there?" she asked, recognition dawning. "At the restaurant?" He nodded, his expression apologetic. "I arrived just in time to see the incident. I'm sorry about what happened to you. It was completely unfair." Samantha crossed her arms. "And you tracked me down because I know people in the industry," Liam explained. "A friend of mine manages Harvest Table downtown. They need a new lead server. And after what I saw of your skills before the accident, I thought you'd be perfect." Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Why would you help a complete stranger?" Liam shifted, looking uncomfortable. Let's just say I have a personal interest in making things right when someone's been treated unfairly. Are you a reporter? She asked bluntly, looking for dirt on Aldridge. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. No, nothing like that. I'm just someone who believes in second chances. Samantha studied him. Either this guy was the world's nicest stranger, or there was something he wasn't telling her, but beggars couldn't be choosers, and her grandmother's prescription needed refilling next week. Come in, she said finally, stepping aside. But I should warn you, my trust meter is running pretty low these days, across town. Vincent Aldridge sat in his corner office on the 40th floor of Aldridge Tower, staring at the personnel file on his desk. Samantha Matthews, he read aloud, tapping his finger on her employee photo. 25, hired 6 months ago. Stellar performance reviews. He looked up at his personal assistant. And I want to know why she seems so familiar. Sir, with all due respect, his assistant replied. She was just a server. Is this really worth your time? Vincent's gaze could have frozen hell. When I ask for information, Harrison, I expect it to be provided without commentary. Harrison nodded stiffly. Of course, sir. I'll have a complete background check on your desk by this afternoon. After Harrison left, Vincent swiveled his chair to face the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. For 3 days, that girl's face had haunted him. Something in her eyes, in the stubborn set of her jaw, had triggered a memory he couldn't quite place. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Aldridge, your son is here to see you. Vincent frowned. Liam wasn't expected back from Boston until next week. Send him in. Liam entered with the easy confidence of someone who'd grown up with privilege but wasn't defined by it. At 28, he had his mother's warmth, but Vincent's sharp intelligence, a combination that made him both the heir apparent to the Aldridge empire and its most vocal internal critic. You're early, Vincent observed, rising to greet his son with a firm handshake, no hugs. They hadn't done those since Liam was 12. The Boston project wrapped ahead of schedule, Liam replied. And I heard about the Dubai investors. Congratulations. Vincent waved away the comment. It was nothing extraordinary, just business. I also heard about the incident at the restaurant. Vincent's expression darkened. A minor annoyance. Nothing more. You publicly humiliated and fired a woman for an accident, Liam said, his tone carefully neutral. That doesn't seem minor to her, I'm sure. Since when do you concern yourself with the employment status of restaurant staff? Vincent asked, studying his son's face. Liam maintained eye contact. Since I witnessed someone being treated unfairly by a member of my family, the tension between them stretched like a wire. 28 years of complicated history, of a son trying to live up to, and sometimes live down, his father's legacy. You've always had a soft heart, Vincent said finally. Your mother's influence, no doubt. Is compassion really such a weakness in your eyes? Liam asked. Vincent returned to his chair. In business, absolutely. Compassion is for charity work, which you're welcome to do with your trust fund. But the Aldridge empire wasn't built by being nice. Maybe it's time for that to change, Liam suggested. Vincent studied his son, wondering not for the first time if Liam had what it took to maintain what he'd built. You'll understand when you're in charge someday. Sentiment has no place in success. Liam seemed about to argue, then checked himself. Actually, that's not why I came by. I wanted to tell you I'll be staying in Chicago for a while. I'm thinking of overseeing the River North development personally. That's unexpected, Vincent said. But welcome news. He paused. Will you be joining me for dinner tonight? Portelli's at 8. Not tonight. I have plans. Liam headed for the door, then stopped. Dad, that server you fired. Did you have her blacklisted? Vincent's expression revealed nothing. I simply informed some colleagues about a subpar employee. The industry is small. She's a person with bills to pay. A life. She's a lesson in consequences, Vincent corrected, and not your concern. After Liam left, Vincent returned to the personnel file, that nagging sense of familiarity still tugging at his mind. What was it about that girl? His phone rang. Harrison. Sir, you wanted information on Samantha Matthews. I found something you might want to see immediately. Go on, Vincent said. Her mother's name, sir. It was Nancy Matthews. Vincent went completely still, the blood draining from his face. Nancy, a name he hadn't heard in 26 years. a name he'd tried very hard to forget. "Sir," Harrison's voice sounded distant. "Are you there? Send me everything," Vincent managed to say, his voice barely audible. "Everything you can find on both of them." He hung up, staring blindly at the Chicago skyline as the past he'd buried decades ago rose like a ghost before him. Vincent sat alone in his study, the lights of Chicago twinkling beyond the windows like distant stars. The manila folder lay open on his desk, its contents spread before him like evidence at a crime scene. Photographs, newspaper clippings, and a birth certificate that confirmed what he'd feared from the moment he heard Nancy's name, Samantha Eleanor Matthews, born June 12, 1999. 26 years, he whispered to the empty room. He picked up the oldest photograph, worn at the edges from handling. Nancy at 22, laughing at something beyond the camera's frame, her auburn hair catching the sunlight. She had been a waitress too, at a diner near his first real estate office, back when he was still hungry and building his name, before the towers and hotels, before the millions became billions. Vincent closed his eyes, and the memories he'd locked away came flooding back. "You're different from the other suits," Nancy had told him on their third date, curled against him in her tiny apartment. "You actually see people." That's what she'd loved about him, that he noticed the details others missed. The way she'd subtly guide elderly customers to the tables with better lighting. How she remembered every regular's order without writing it down. Their romance had been intense, secret, and entirely separate from his professional life. With Nancy, Vincent could be himself, not the ruthless businessman. Chicago was beginning to whisper about with equal parts fear and respect. "We need to talk," Nancy had said that spring day in 1998. They'd been seeing each other for almost a year. She was pregnant, his child, their child. The timing couldn't have been worse. Vincent was on the verge of securing financing for his first major development, a deal that hinged on his impending marriage to Catherine Westbrook, the only daughter of his most important investor. "I've been offered the Westbrook deal," he'd told Nancy that night, pacing her small living room. "It's everything I've worked for, everything I've sacrificed for, and I'm just another sacrifice," Nancy had asked quietly, one hand resting on her still flat stomach. He'd offered money, lots of it, a comfortable life for her and the child. But Nancy didn't want money. She wanted him, a family. "I won't be your dirty secret, Vincent," she'd said, her chin raised with the same stubborn dignity he'd later see in her daughter. "And I won't let our child grow up thinking they were a mistake." He'd made his choice that night. The Westbrook deal, the future, his ambition. The last time he saw Nancy, she was standing in the rain outside her apartment building, refusing even to take the check he'd tried to give her. "I hope it's worth it," she'd said simply, before walking away. And it had been worth it, hadn't it? The Westbrook connection had been the foundation of everything that followed. The towers, the hotels, the respect, the power. Vincent took another sip of whiskey, his gaze returning to Samantha's employee photo. The girl had Nancy's mouth, her determined chin. But those eyes, those were undeniably Aldridge eyes. How had he not seen it immediately? His phone rang, pulling him from the past. "I found the grandmother," Harrison reported. "Eleanor Matthews. She raised Samantha after Nancy died of cancer in 2010. She's not doing well. Multiple hospital admissions this year for COPD. Their finances are precarious." Vincent rubbed his forehead. "And Nancy? What happened to her after?" "She never married. Worked multiple jobs to support her daughter. No contact with anyone from the Aldridge side, as far as I can tell." "Thank you, Harrison. That will be all." Vincent hung up and reached for the whiskey again, but his hand paused midair. With a sudden surge of energy, he slammed the glass down and swept the contents of the folder into his briefcase. He had a daughter who hated him, who had no idea who he really was to her, a daughter he'd cast out into a hostile world without a second thought. The realization settled over him like a shroud. What would he even say to her? What could possibly make up for 26 years of absence? "So the interview is tomorrow at 10, Liam explained, watching Samantha pace her small living room. "Jeff's a good guy, fair. The pay is better than the opulent, believe it or not. And the clientele is less entitled," Samantha suggested with a wry smile. "I was going to say stuffy, but your word works too." Samantha stopped pacing. Why are you really helping me, Liam? And don't say it's just because you're a nice guy. Over the past 2 days, Liam had not only secured her an interview, but had also helped her update her resume and even driven her to the pharmacy for Eleanor's medication when he learned they were running low. It was the kind of kindness that made her suspicious. Liam hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Let's just say I know what it's like to have your future controlled by powerful people who don't always consider the human cost of their decisions. Before Samantha could press further, Eleanor appeared in the doorway, her oxygen tank trailing behind her like a faithful pet. I thought I heard voices, she said, her eyes curious as they landed on Liam. Samantha hurried to her grandmother's side. Gran, you should be resting. This is Liam. He's helping me find a new job. Liam stood, extending his hand. It's a pleasure to meet you. Mrs. Matthews. Eleanor took his hand, studying him with an intensity that made him shift uncomfortably. You look familiar, young man. I have one of those faces, Liam replied with an easy smile. Eleanor didn't smile back. No, it's more specific than that. She glanced at Samantha. Could you get me my pills? Dear, it's almost time. Once Samantha had gone to the kitchen, Eleanor's expression hardened. You're Vincent's son, aren't you? Liam's smile faded. How did you... I've watched you grow up in the society pages since you were a child, Eleanor said quietly. What game are you playing with my granddaughter? No game, Liam assured her, lowering his voice. I saw what happened at the restaurant. It was wrong. I'm just trying to help. Does she know who you are? No, Liam admitted, and I'd prefer to keep it that way for now. Eleanor's gaze was penetrating. Does Vincent know who she is? The question caught Liam off guard. What do you mean? Before Eleanor could answer, Samantha returned with a glass of water and medication. Here you go, Gran. She looked between them. Everything okay? Just fine, dear, Eleanor said, taking the pills. Your friend was telling me about the restaurant where you'll be interviewing. Sounds lovely. Samantha nodded, but her eyes remained suspicious. She'd noted the sudden tension in the room. After Eleanor excused herself to rest, Samantha turned to Liam. What were you two really talking about? Just getting acquainted, Liam replied, not quite meeting her eyes. Your grandmother is very protective of you. She's all I have, Samantha said simply. Has been since my mom died. The guilt on Liam's face deepened, though Samantha couldn't understand why. I should go, he said suddenly. Big day tomorrow. You should rest up. After he left, Samantha found her grandmother sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at an old wooden box she rarely opened. Gran, what did you say to Liam? He practically ran out of here. Eleanor sighed, patting the spot beside her. Sit down, sweetheart. There's something I've been keeping from you. Something about your father. Samantha stiffened. I don't have a father. He abandoned Mom before I was born, end of story. It's not that simple, Eleanor began, but a sudden wheezing cough interrupted her. She reached for her inhaler, taking a desperate puff. Samantha's irritation instantly gave way to concern. Gran, are you okay? Eleanor nodded weakly, but the color had drained from her face. She tried to speak, but another coughing fit overtook her. This one didn't stop. Gran. Samantha lunged for the phone. I'm calling an ambulance. As the paramedics rushed Eleanor to the hospital, the wooden box remained on her bed, unopened. Inside lay the answers Samantha had never sought, and the truth about the man who had thrown her out of his restaurant without ever knowing he was looking into the eyes of his own daughter. The hospital waiting room smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. Samantha sat hunched in an uncomfortable plastic chair, staring at the same page of an outdated magazine she'd been pretending to read for the past hour. Every time the automatic doors slid open, her head snapped up, hoping for news about her grandmother. Her phone buzzed. A text from Liam. Any updates? She typed back, still waiting. They're running tests. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. I'm coming over. Samantha frowned. You don't have to. I'm fine. No one should wait alone. Be there in 20. She put her phone down, unsure whether to be touched or irritated by his persistence. Her grandmother's sudden collapse had forced her to miss the job interview Liam had arranged. One more door closed. Miss Matthews? Samantha looked up to see Dr. Patel, the pulmonologist who had been treating Eleanor for years. How is she? Samantha asked, standing quickly. Dr. Patel's expression was gentle but serious. She's stabilized for now. The COPD has progressed significantly since her last visit, and we've found some concerning shadows on her lungs that require further investigation. Shadows, Samantha repeated. You mean cancer? We can't say for certain without a biopsy, Dr. Patel explained. But given her history with your mother, we want to be thorough. The floor seemed to tilt beneath Samantha's feet. Cancer had taken her mother at 36. The memory of those final months, the hospital visits, the gradual fading, was still raw even after 15 years. What about her insurance? Samantha asked. They've already denied coverage for the new COPD treatment, Doctor. Patel's hesitation told her everything. There are some options we can discuss. Assistance programs. For how much? Samantha interrupted. The full panel of tests and potential treatments could run upwards of $30,000. The number hung in the air between them, impossibly large. Can I see her? Samantha asked, her voice small. Doctor. Patel nodded. Of course, she's been asking for you. And Samantha. She also asked for something from home. A wooden box from her bedside table. She was quite insistent about it. 20 minutes later, Liam found Samantha sitting beside Eleanor's hospital bed. Her grandmother was asleep. Oxygen mask covering most of her face. Monitors beeping a steady rhythm. Hey, he said softly, placing a gentle hand on Samantha's shoulder. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. Hey, you didn't have to come. I wanted to. He glanced at Eleanor. How is she? Stable for now. Samantha's voice was flat. They want to run more tests. Expensive tests. Liam hesitated, then pulled up a chair beside her. Let me help. I don't need charity. It's not charity, it's... What? Human decency. She shook her head. People like you don't just help strangers without a reason. People like me, Liam repeated carefully. Rich people. People who've never had to choose between medicine and rent. Liam's expression shifted. A flash of hurt quickly masked. You don't know anything about me, Samantha. I know enough. She gestured to his designer watch, his tailored clothes. I know you're playing at being a good Samaritan. And I'm too tired to figure out why. Before Liam could respond, Eleanor stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, immediately finding Samantha. The box, she whispered, her voice muffled by the oxygen mask. Did you bring it? Samantha nodded, pulling the wooden box from her bag and placing it on the bedside table. It's right here, Gran. Eleanor's eyes drifted to Liam, widening slightly in recognition. You're still here, she murmured. I wanted to make sure you were both okay, Liam replied softly. Eleanor studied him, then turned to Samantha. Open the box, dear, she said. It's time you knew. With trembling hands, Samantha lifted the lid. Inside lay a stack of yellowed photographs, letters tied with faded ribbon, and a sealed envelope with Samantha's name written in Eleanor's shaky handwriting. The envelope, Eleanor instructed. Read it. Samantha broke the seal and unfolded several pages of her grandmother's careful script. As she read, the color drained from her face. Liam watched her expression shift from confusion to disbelief, then to something darker, a cold, hard anger that transformed her features. This can't be true, Samantha whispered, looking up at her grandmother. Vincent Aldridge, the man who... She couldn't finish the sentence. Eleanor nodded weakly. Your mother wanted to tell you when you were old enough. But then she got sick, and afterwards, I couldn't bring myself to burden you with it. Samantha turned to Liam, her eyes narrowing with sudden suspicion. Did you know about this? He blinked, genuinely startled. You know what? Don't lie to me, she hissed, thrusting the letter toward him. Did you know Vincent Aldridge is my father? The shock on Liam's face was unmistakable. What? No, He stared at the letter, then back at Samantha, the pieces suddenly falling into place. That's impossible. According to my mother's letter, it's very possible, Samantha replied bitterly. Apparently, he chose his precious business deal over acknowledging his own child. She laughed, a hollow sound. And then he fired me, his own daughter. Liam looked stunned, his mind visibly racing to process this revelation. Samantha, I swear, I had no idea. Eleanor watched them, her breathing labored. You really didn't know? She asked Liam. He shook his head. No, but... He hesitated, guilt washing over his features. But what? Samantha demanded. Liam took a deep breath. My last name is Aldridge. Vincent is my father. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the steady beeping of Eleanor's monitors. Get out, Samantha finally said, her voice dangerously quiet. Please let me explain. Get out. She was on her feet now, trembling with rage. Was this some kind of sick joke to you, poor little Samantha? Let's see how close we can get before she figures out who we really are. It wasn't like that, Liam protested. I saw how he treated you and wanted to help. I didn't know who you were. Samantha, Eleanor interjected weakly. Listen to him. No, Samantha's voice broke. You lied to me my whole life, and he's been lying since the moment we met. I'm done with lies. Liam stood, his expression pained. I never meant to hurt you. When I saw what happened at the restaurant, I just wanted to make things right. Well, you can't, Samantha said flatly. Nothing about this situation will ever be right. She turned away from him. Please leave. After Liam had gone, Samantha sank back into the chair beside her grandmother's bed, clutching the letter in her shaking hands. All these years, she whispered. Why didn't you tell me? Eleanor reached for her granddaughter's hand. Your mother wanted to protect you from the pain she went through, and after she died, her voice faltered. I was afraid of losing you too, afraid you'd go looking for him and he'd hurt you just like he hurt her. He already did, Samantha said bitterly, in front of an entire restaurant of people, without even knowing who I was. Eleanor squeezed her hand. People can change, Samantha. Not people like him. Samantha tucked the letter back into the box. What am I supposed to do with this information, Gran? March into his office and announce I'm the daughter he never wanted? That's your choice to make, Eleanor replied. But remember, this changes nothing about who you are. Nancy raised you to be strong, kind, and independent. Everything Vincent Aldridge is not. Samantha nodded, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying every moment of her interaction with Liam in a new, suspicious light. Had he known all along? Had Vincent sent him to spy on her? The thought made her stomach turn. Outside the hospital room, Liam leaned against the wall, his phone in his hand. On the screen was a text draft to his father. We need to talk. About Samantha Matthews. His finger hovered over the send button, then moved to delete the message instead. This wasn't his secret to share, but the revelation had shaken him to his core. He had a half-sister, one his father had abandoned before she was even born. And now, through some cosmic twist of fate, Vincent had humiliated and fired his own daughter without ever knowing who she was. The universe had a dark sense of humor indeed. Vincent Aldridge stood outside the hospital room, watching through the narrow window as Samantha sat beside her grandmother's bed. 3 days since her admission, and Eleanor Matthews's condition had stabilized, but remained serious. Vincent had stayed hidden, observing from a distance, trying to find the courage to approach the daughter he'd never known. He hadn't told Harrison why he wanted Eleanor's medical records and bills, hadn't explained why he'd anonymously paid for every test, every treatment, every specialist consultation. Some things even a trusted assistant didn't need to know. Mr. Aldridge. Vincent turned to find Dr. Patel approaching, chart in hand. How is she? Vincent asked quietly. Better than yesterday? The new treatment is showing promising results. Dr. Patel hesitated. May I ask what your interest is in Mrs. Matthews's case? You're not listed as family. It's complicated, Vincent replied. Just ensure she receives the best care possible. Money is no object, Dr. Patel nodded carefully. And the granddaughter, she's been here around the clock, refusing to leave. Should I tell her about her grandmother's benefactor? No. Vincent's response was immediate. She wouldn't accept it if she knew it came from me. As Dr. Patel walked away, Vincent took one last look through the window. In sleep, Samantha's face softened, the stubborn set of her jaw relaxing. She looked painfully young, vulnerable in a way that twisted something inside him. Had Nancy looked that way when he'd left her alone and pregnant, just as he turned to leave? A familiar voice stopped him cold. Dad, what are you doing here? Liam stood at the end of the hallway, his expression a mixture of shock and suspicion. I could ask you the same question, Vincent replied, recovering quickly. I'm here to see a friend. Liam's eyes flickered to the room Vincent had been watching. Samantha Matthews. But you already knew that, didn't you? Vincent straightened, adopting the impassive mask he wore in business negotiations. Harrison is very thorough in his research. So you know, Liam's voice hardened. You know who she is to you. To us, Vincent corrected quietly. She's your half-sister. Liam stepped closer, lowering his voice. Did you know when you humiliated her in front of the entire restaurant? When you had her blacklisted across the city? Of course not, Vincent snapped. Do you think I'm a monster? I think you're a man who spent his life putting business before people, Liam replied evenly. But this is different. This is family. Vincent's expression tightened. Family is complicated. Only when you make it that way. Liam glanced toward Samantha's room. Does she know you're here? No, and I'd prefer to keep it that way for now. She knows who you are to her, Liam said. Her grandmother told her everything. Vincent closed his eyes briefly. How did she take it? How do you think? Liam's tone was biting. She found out the father she never knew rejected her before birth, then publicly humiliated and fired her without recognizing his own daughter. The words landed like physical blows. Vincent had faced hostile takeovers, market crashes, and cutthroat competitors without flinching, but his son's quiet condemnation left him without defense. I need to speak with her, Vincent said finally. That's not a good idea right now. I'm her father. You've never been her father, Liam corrected. You've been a DNA donor who wants to ease his conscience now that it's convenient. Vincent's temper flared. You have no idea what you're talking about. The situation with Nancy was... I don't care about your excuses, Liam interrupted. Samantha doesn't need you barging into her life when her grandmother is fighting for hers. If you want to help, stay away. Father and son stared at each other, decades of unspoken tension crystallizing in this moment. Fine, Vincent conceded finally. But this isn't over. As Vincent walked away, Liam leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. He hadn't told Samantha about running into Vincent, hadn't mentioned that her biological father was lurking in the hospital like a ghost from the past. She had enough to deal with already. Inside the room, Samantha stirred, opening her eyes to find Liam in the doorway. You came back, she said flatly. I brought food. He held up a paper bag. Real food, not cafeteria sandwiches. Her stomach growled in betrayal. She hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. I'm still mad at you, she warned, taking the bag. I know. Liam pulled up a chair. How is she? Samantha glanced at her sleeping grandmother. Better. They're calling it a positive response to the new treatment. She frowned. A treatment the insurance refused to cover last week. Suddenly it's approved and paid for. That's good news, right? It's suspicious news. Samantha unwrapped a sandwich. Just like you showing up at my apartment right after I lost my job. Just like this mysterious interview that materialized out of nowhere. Liam's expression remained carefully neutral. What are you suggesting? I don't know yet. She took a bite of sandwich, studying him. But I know there's more you're not telling me. Their conversation was interrupted by Eleanor's weak voice. Liam, she called. You came back. He moved to her bedside. How are you feeling, Mrs. Matthews? Better than yesterday, she replied, her gaze sharpening. Did you tell your father? Liam hesitated. No, it wasn't my place. Tell him what? Samantha interjected, looking between them. Eleanor reached for her granddaughter's hand. Samantha, we need to talk about Vincent. There's nothing to talk about, Samantha replied stiffly. He made his choice 26 years ago. People can change, Eleanor insisted. Not him, Samantha said bitterly. Men like Vincent Aldridge don't change. They just find new ways to control people. You don't know him, Eleanor countered. And whose fault is that? Samantha's voice cracked. He didn't want me then, and I don't want him now. End of story. Eleanor turned to Liam. Tell her about your father, the real Vincent, not just the businessman everyone sees. Liam looked uncomfortable. I'm not sure I'm the right person for that. There is no real Vincent, Samantha insisted. What you see is what you get. A cold, calculating man who values money over people. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of monitors. Finally, Eleanor spoke again, her voice tired but determined. Nancy loved him once, she said softly. Deeply, she saw something in him worth loving. And he betrayed her, Samantha reminded her. Left her pregnant and alone to marry someone with the right connections. Yes, Eleanor acknowledged. But she never regretted having you, and she never taught you to hate him. That's a choice you're making on your own. Samantha stood abruptly. I need some air. Outside, the hospital garden was empty in the evening chill. Samantha sat on a stone bench, drawing her jacket tighter around herself. Her life had completely unraveled in less than a week. Job gone, grandmother seriously ill, and now the revelation that she was the secret daughter of one of Chicago's wealthiest and most ruthless businessmen, and Liam, her half-brother, the brother she'd never known she had. The thought was still too strange to fully process. She heard footsteps on the garden path and looked up to find Liam approaching cautiously. Mind if I join you? He asked. Samantha shrugged, which he took as permission to sit beside her. I should have told you who I was from the beginning, he said after a moment. Yes, you should have. I was afraid you wouldn't accept my help if you knew. Samantha couldn't argue with that. So what happens now? Liam hesitated. That depends on what you want. If you want Vincent out of your life forever, I'll respect that. I'll still help your grandmother, as your friend, not as an Aldridge. And if I don't, then I can help you navigate this complicated situation. He looked at her directly. Whatever you decide, I'm on your side, Samantha, not his. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed, a news alert. She opened it, then froze. What is it? Liam asked, without a word. She handed him the phone. The headline blared, Aldridge Empire under investigation. Federal agents raid Chicago headquarters. Beneath it, a photo of Vincent being escorted from Aldridge Tower, his face a mask of controlled rage. Did you know about this? Samantha demanded. Liam stared at the screen in genuine shock. No, I had no idea. As they watched, more notifications flooded in. Allegations of tax fraud, bribery of city officials, labor violations across multiple properties. The perfect, polished facade of the Aldridge Empire was cracking wide open. Well, Samantha said finally, a strange mix of emotions washing over her. Looks like my biological father is not just a terrible person, but a criminal too. Liam didn't correct her. He couldn't. The Aldridge Tower lobby had transformed overnight. Where there had once been an atmosphere of hushed reverence, there was now chaos. Reporters clustered around the entrance, security guards struggling to maintain order, and employees huddled in corners, whispering anxiously about their futures. Liam strode through the melee, ignoring the shouted questions from journalists who recognized the Aldridge air. His face betrayed nothing as he stepped into the private elevator to the executive floor. Mr. Aldridge, the receptionist greeted him nervously as he emerged. Your father is expecting you. Vincent's corner office, usually immaculate, showed signs of disruption. Files were missing from shelves, and his computer had been replaced with a sticky note reading, Evidence, Federal Investigation, No. A 7721. They took everything, Vincent said without preamble as Liam entered, though impeccably dressed as always. His face showed the strain of the past 24 hours. Computers, files, even my personal calendar. What exactly are they looking for? Liam asked, remaining standing. Everything and anything. Vincent poured himself a scotch, not offering one to his son. The riverfront development, the zoning changes for the West Loop project, the labor contracts for the hotel renovations. Are they going to find anything? Vincent's gaze sharpened. What exactly are you asking me, Liam? You know exactly what I'm asking. Liam replied evenly. Is there truth to these allegations? Vincent took a long sip before answering. Business in Chicago has always required flexibility in how things get done. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting right now. Vincent placed his glass down with precision. The board is meeting in an hour. They're panicking, of course. The stock has dropped 17% since the news broke. What do you need from me? Liam asked, his tone carefully professional. Vincent studied his son. I need you to publicly stand with me. The investors need to see a united front. Family solidarity. Family solidarity, Liam repeated, a bitter edge to his voice. Interesting choice of words. Vincent's expression hardened. If you have something to say it. I saw Samantha yesterday, Liam said, at the hospital where her grandmother is fighting for her life. The grandmother who raised her after you abandoned her mother. The color drained from Vincent's face. I told you that situation was Complicated, yes, I remember. Liam shook his head. Everything with you is complicated, isn't it? Except when it comes to business, then suddenly things are crystal clear. You have no idea what you're talking about, Vincent snapped. I was building something. Something that would last. Something that you would inherit. Along with your secrets, your compromises. Liam's voice rose slightly. How many others are there, Dad? How many people have you sacrificed for this precious empire of yours? Vincent slammed his hand on the desk. Enough. I don't have time for this right now. Are you with me or not? The question hung between them like a challenge. Finally, Liam answered. I'll attend the board meeting, he said coolly. But don't mistake my presence for approval. 3 miles away, Samantha sat in the hospital cafeteria, scrolling through news stories about the Aldridge investigation. The exposé was extensive. Allegations of systematic bribery of building inspectors, tax evasion schemes, and labor violations spanning decades. Reading about your father, Samantha looked up to find her grandmother in a wheelchair, a nurse standing behind her. Mrs. Matthews insisted on getting out of bed. The nurse explained with a resigned smile. I was going stir-crazy in that room, Eleanor said, waving away the concern. And you've been avoiding me. Samantha closed her laptop. I needed some space to think. The nurse helped Eleanor to the table. I'll be back in 30 minutes, she told them before leaving. Eleanor reached for Samantha's hand. Talk to me, sweetheart. About what? The fact that my biological father is a criminal, or that you kept his identity from me my entire life. I deserved that, Eleanor acknowledged. But your mother made me promise not to tell you unless absolutely necessary. She didn't want his shadow hanging over your life. Well, it's hanging now, Samantha said bitterly, gesturing to the news headlines visible on nearby phones and televisions. Everyone in Chicago was talking about the Aldridge scandal. What are you going to do? Eleanor asked. Samantha shrugged. Nothing. This doesn't change anything for me. He's still the man who rejected my mother and humiliated me. Now he's just in trouble too. Karma, Eleanor murmured, a faint smile playing at her lips. Despite herself, Samantha laughed. Exactly. Eleanor's expression grew serious. And what about Liam? What about him? He's your brother, Samantha. Half-brother, Samantha corrected. And he lied to me from the moment we met. To help you, Eleanor reminded her. Without knowing who you really were, Samantha was silent, wrestling with the complicated emotions surrounding Liam. Anger at his deception warred with grudging appreciation for his help with Gran's medical care. He called this morning, Eleanor continued. Asked how I was doing. Said the hospital billing department shouldn't give us any trouble. Samantha frowned. What does that mean? I think it means he's taking care of things, Eleanor said carefully, in his own way. Before Samantha could respond, her phone rang. An unknown number. Samantha Matthews. A woman's voice asked when she answered, Yes. This is Caroline Winters from Blake & Associates. We represent the Aldridge family and related corporations. We'd like to arrange a meeting with you at your earliest convenience. Samantha's heart hammered in her chest. Regarding what? I'm not at liberty to discuss details over the phone, but it concerns a matter of significant importance to both you and Mr. Aldridge. Would tomorrow at 10 a.m. suit you? After hanging up, Samantha relayed the conversation to her grandmother. They found out, Eleanor said quietly. They know you're Vincent's daughter. But how? Liam promised he wouldn't tell. Maybe he didn't have to, Eleanor suggested. You have your mother's looks, but anyone who knows the Aldridges would see Vincent in your eyes. Your expressions, and Vincent has been investigating your background. Samantha's jaw tightened. It doesn't matter. I'm not going. Yes, you are, Eleanor said firmly. This is your chance to look him in the eye as an equal, to show him exactly what he missed by choosing his ambition over his child. It sounds like revenge. It's closure, Eleanor corrected. Something your mother never got. The following morning, Samantha found herself in the sleek reception area of Blake & Associates, Chicago's most prestigious law firm. Everything about the space screamed money and power, from the genuine Rothko on the wall to the marble floors polished to a mirror shine. Ms. Matthews, a polished assistant appeared. They're ready for you? Samantha followed her down a hallway to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Inside, 3 people waited. an elegant woman in her 50s who introduced herself as Caroline Winters, a younger man with a laptop, and Liam. "Where's Vincent?" Samantha asked immediately. "Mr. Aldridge was called to an emergency meeting with federal investigators," Caroline explained smoothly. "Liam is here as the family representative." Liam met Samantha's accusing gaze with an apologetic one of his own. "I didn't know about this meeting until an hour ago," he said quietly. Caroline gestured to a chair. "Please sit. We have matters of tremendous importance to discuss." Samantha remained standing. "Let me save us all some time. If this is about keeping quiet about being Vincent's illegitimate daughter during his legal troubles, I have no interest in whatever he's offering." Caroline's professional smile didn't waver. "Actually, Mrs. Matthews, this meeting is about establishing your legal claim to the Aldridge fortune as Vincent's biological daughter. Our DNA analysis confirms with 99.7% certainty that you are, in fact, his child, entitled to equal standing with Liam as an Aldridge heir." The room seemed to tilt. This was the last thing Samantha had expected. "What?" she managed. Caroline opened a folder. "Given the current legal situation, there's significant risk of asset seizure. Vincent has instructed us to secure your position as a rightful Aldridge before that becomes impossible." "I don't want his money," Samantha said automatically. "Perhaps not," Caroline replied. "But you might want to say in what happens to the company, especially the thousands of employees whose livelihoods hang in the balance." Liam finally spoke. "Samantha, the company is in free fall. The board is panicking. Vincent is..." He hesitated. "He's not in a good position right now. But together, you and I might be able to salvage something from this mess." Samantha looked between them, her mind racing. Why would Vincent do this? Why now? "Because," Caroline said simply, "despite his many flaws, he wants to do right by you before it's too late. The question is, are you willing to listen to our proposal?" "This is insane," Samantha said. Pacing the small hospital room where Eleanor was now sitting up in bed, looking markedly better than she had days before. "They want me to be an Aldridge. Me." Eleanor watched her granddaughter with a mixture of concern and curiosity. What exactly did they propose? Legal recognition as Vincent's daughter. Equal standing with Liam as an heir. A seat on the board of directors. Samantha ran a hand through her hair. "And they need an answer by tomorrow. Because of the investigation." Samantha nodded. "The company's in crisis. Stocks plummeting. Investors fleeing. Employees panicking. Caroline, the lawyer, said Vincent wants to secure my position before the feds can freeze everything. And what does Liam say?" "That's the strangest part," Samantha replied, finally sitting at the edge of her grandmother's bed. "He actually wants me to accept, says we could work together to save what can be saved." Eleanor studied her granddaughter's face. "You're tempted?" "No," Samantha protested quickly, then sighed. "Maybe. Not for the money or the Aldridge name. I couldn't care less about those. But there are thousands of employees whose jobs are at risk. People like me, who didn't do anything wrong but could lose everything because of Vincent's schemes." "Your mother would be proud," Eleanor said softly. "She always taught you to think of others first." Samantha's eyes filled unexpectedly with tears. What would she think of me even considering taking his name after what he did to her? Eleanor reached for her granddaughter's hand. "Nancy wasn't bitter, Samantha. Hurt, yes. Disappointed, absolutely. But she never wanted you to carry her pain." She paused. "She'd want you to make this decision for yourself. Not for her, and not against Vincent." Before Samantha could respond, there was a knock at the door. Liam stood in the doorway looking uncertain. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "The nurse downstairs said it was okay to come up." Eleanor smiled welcomingly. "Come in, Liam. We were just discussing your proposal." Samantha shot her grandmother a look, but moved aside so Liam could enter. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Matthews?" he asked. "Much better, thanks to the excellent care I've been receiving." Eleanor fixed him with a knowing look. "Care that I suspect has something to do with your family." Liam didn't deny it. "Everyone deserves good medical treatment," he said simply. Samantha crossed her arms. "Why are you here, Liam?" "I wanted to make sure you understood what's at stake," he replied, "and to answer any questions you might have, away from the lawyers and corporate talk." "All right," Samantha said, sitting back down. "Let's start with the obvious. Why would Vincent Aldridge suddenly want to acknowledge the daughter he rejected before she was even born? Especially now, when his empire is crumbling around him. Liam considered his answer carefully. I think it's a combination of things. The investigation has forced him to reevaluate his life, his choices, and... He hesitated. I've never seen him like this, Samantha. When he confirmed you were his daughter, something broke in him. Decades of denial, maybe, or regret. So I'm supposed to just forgive and forget. Welcome to the family. All is forgiven. No one expects that, Liam assured her. Least of all Vincent. But this isn't just about him, or even about you and me. It's about what happens to Aldridge Enterprises and everyone who depends on it, Eleanor interjected softly. Tell us what's really happening with the company, Liam. Beyond the headlines. Liam glanced at the door to ensure it was closed. It's bad, he admitted. The feds have evidence of systematic bribery going back 15 years. Tax evasion schemes, labor violations, falsified environmental impact reports. The legal exposure is massive. And Vincent, Samantha asked, likely facing criminal charges. The board wants him to step down immediately. So why bring me into this mess now? Samantha demanded. What possible benefit could adding another Aldridge to the mix have? Liam leaned forward. Because you're not tainted by any of it. Samantha, you're the one Aldridge who had nothing to do with the company's wrongdoings. You're our best chance at saving what can be saved. Samantha stared at him incredulously. You want me to be what? The clean face of a corrupt company? I want you to help me transform it into something better, Liam corrected. Something your mother would be proud of. The mention of Nancy hit Samantha like a physical blow. Don't you dare use her against me, she said quietly. You didn't know her. You're right, I didn't, Liam acknowledged. But I know that she raised a daughter strong enough to face down Vincent Aldridge, twice now. First at the restaurant, and now in the middle of the biggest crisis of his life. Eleanor watched this exchange with interest, noting the growing respect in Liam's voice when he addressed Samantha. There was no condescension, no manipulation, just a genuine appeal from one sibling to another. What would I have to do? Samantha asked finally. Initially, accept legal recognition as Vincent's daughter and take the board seat, Liam explained. Learn the business quickly. I'll help with that. Then work with me to implement a complete overhaul, new ethical guidelines, transparent accounting, fair labor practices. And Vincent, what role does he play in this plan? Liam's expression hardened slightly. None. For this to work, he needs to step away completely. He'd never agree to that, Samantha said skeptically. He already has, Liam replied. It was his idea. Samantha fell silent, processing this information. The Vincent Aldridge she'd read about in the headlines. Arrogant, controlling, ruthless. Didn't align with a man willing to hand over his life's work to the children he'd treated so differently. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course. Liam stood. But not too much time. The board meets tomorrow at noon. After he left, Samantha turned to her grandmother. What do you think? Eleanor's gaze was thoughtful. I think you're being offered a chance that most people never get. To remake something broken into something worthwhile. Or to get dragged down with a sinking ship, Samantha countered. That's always a risk, Eleanor agreed. But you've never been one to shy away from a challenge. Samantha moved to the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline dominated by buildings bearing the Aldridge name. All her life, she'd been Nancy Matthews's daughter, proud of her humble origins, defined by her mother's strength and sacrifice. Could she be Vincent Aldridge's daughter too, without betraying Nancy's memory? I want to see him, she said suddenly. Vincent, before I make any decision, Eleanor nodded, unsurprised. You deserve that. The Aldridge mansion stood on Lakeshore Drive, a monument to old money and power. Samantha had passed it many times, never imagining any connection to the people inside. Now, as the security gate swung open for her taxi, she felt like an imposter. A housekeeper led her through marble hallways to a study at the back of the house. The room was dark, lit only by a single lamp and the dying fire in the grate. Vincent sat in a leather chair, staring at a tumbler of amber liquid as if it held answers to questions he hadn't yet asked. He looked smaller than Samantha remembered, diminished somehow. The arrogant tyrant who had humiliated her seemed replaced by an older, wearier man. You came, he said, not looking up. I wanted to hear it from you directly. Samantha replied, remaining by the door. Why now, after 26 years of pretending I didn't exist? Vincent finally raised his gaze to hers. The resemblance between them was unmistakable now that she knew to look for it. The same determined set of the jaw, the same intensity in their eyes. Because I'm out of time, he said simply. And because when I saw you in that hospital, watching over Eleanor, I realized I'd made the greatest mistake of my life the day I walked away from your mother. One revelation doesn't erase 26 years of absence, Samantha said coldly. No, Vincent agreed. Nothing can erase that. I can't change the past, Samantha, but I can try to give you the future you deserve by offering me a piece of your crumbling empire. She laughed bitterly. How generous. Vincent's expression revealed a flash of the steel that had built his fortune. Don't mistake this for charity. You're an Aldridge whether you like it or not. That comes with responsibilities, not just privileges. I'm a Matthews, Samantha corrected firmly. I'm my mother's daughter. You're both, Vincent replied quietly. Just like Liam is both an Aldridge and his mother's son. He set down his glass. The board meeting is tomorrow. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But know this, I'm not offering you an inheritance. I'm offering you a chance to build something better than I did. As Samantha left the mansion, her mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. She'd come seeking closure, perhaps even vengeance, but instead found herself facing the most difficult decision of her life. The Aldridge Enterprises boardroom occupied the entire top floor of Aldridge Tower, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Chicago. Samantha stood at the glass, watching the city spread beneath her like a living map. This view, this power, was part of the birthright Vincent claimed had always been hers. Behind her, 12 empty chairs surrounded a massive table of polished mahogany. In 15 minutes, those chairs would be filled with the board of directors, waiting to meet the previously unknown Aldridge heir. Impressive, isn't it? Liam said, entering quietly. I used to sit up here as a kid while Dad worked late, pretending I was piloting a spaceship above the city. Samantha didn't turn from the window. I used to sit on the fire escape of our apartment building and wonder which of those little lights belonged to my father. Turns out it was the biggest one. Liam joined her at the window. You clean up nice, he said, nodding at her simple but elegant black dress, borrowed from Zoe for the occasion. Don't sound so surprised, she replied dryly. Even we commoners know how to dress. That's not what I... He caught her faint smile and realized she was teasing him. Right, nervous humor. I do the same thing. I'm not nervous, Samantha lied. Just wondering what the hell I'm doing here. Making history, Liam suggested. Or at least changing the course of it for this company. Before she could respond, the double doors opened and Caroline Winters entered, accompanied by a stern-looking man in his 60s. Samantha, this is Walter Pembroke, chairman of the board. Liam introduced them. Walter, my sister, Samantha Matthews. Pembroke extended his hand with obvious reluctance. Miss Matthews, this is unprecedented. For both of us, Samantha replied, meeting his gaze directly. The other board members are gathering in the reception area, Caroline informed them, and the press has gotten wind that something significant is happening. There are reporters downstairs. How? Liam demanded. Your father, Pembroke said grimly. He called a press conference for immediately after this meeting. Samantha's eyes widened. Without consulting anyone. That's Vincent, Pembroke replied with a tight smile, always controlling the narrative. A phone buzzed. Caroline's? She glanced at it, her professional mask slipping momentarily. He's here. The tension in the room ratcheted up instantly. Moments later, Vincent Aldridge strode in, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that effectively masked the strain of the past week. His eyes went immediately to Samantha. You came, he said, an echo of their conversation the previous night. I said I would, she replied evenly. Vincent nodded, his expression betraying nothing of his thoughts. Walter, he acknowledged the chairman with a curt nod. Let's get started. Within minutes, the boardroom filled with men and women whose combined net worth rivaled the GDP of small nations. They eyed Samantha with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. To her surprise, Liam pulled out the chair to Vincent's right for her. Traditionally the CEO's position, he murmured. Seems appropriate. Vincent took his place at the head of the table, despite everything. The federal investigation, the company in crisis, his personal fall from grace. He still commanded the room with the ease of a man born to power. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began without preamble. "You all know why we're here. Aldridge Enterprises faces unprecedented challenges. The federal investigation has severely compromised our position, and decisive action is required." Murmurs of agreement circled the table. "What you don't know," Vincent continued, "is that I've recently confirmed what some of you may have already suspected from the press coverage. I have a daughter." All eyes turned to Samantha, who maintained a neutral expression while her heart hammered in her chest. "This is Samantha Matthews," Vincent said. 26 years ago, I made a decision that I believed was in the best interest of this company. I chose Aldridge Enterprises over acknowledging my child with Nancy Matthews. It was the greatest mistake of my life, both personally and, as recent events have proven, professionally. The board members shifted uncomfortably, unused to such personal revelations from their famously private CEO. The legal documentation confirming Samantha's paternity has been verified and filed, Caroline interjected smoothly. DNA testing confirms she is, without question, Vincent's biological daughter, which makes her an Aldridge heir, Walter Pembroke stated flatly, with potential claim to company shares equal to Liam's. "There's more," Vincent said. "I'm stepping down as CEO, effectively immediately." The room erupted in overlapping voices. Vincent raised a hand for silence. "The federal investigation has made my position untenable. The company needs new leadership, untainted by the past, and capable of implementing the reforms necessary for survival. And you expect us to accept your newly discovered daughter in that role?" one of the older board members asked incredulously. "Someone with zero business experience or knowledge of our operations." "Not alone," Vincent replied. "I'm proposing a joint leadership structure, Liam and Samantha, working together to transform Aldridge Enterprises." More voices rose in protest. Walter Pembroke finally stood, demanding order. "Vincent, while we appreciate your candor, this is hardly the succession plan the board envisioned. Ms. Matthews may be your biological daughter, but she knows nothing about running a multi-billion-dollar corporation. She knows what it's like to be on the receiving end of corporate indifference," Vincent countered. "She understands what it means to work for a living, to struggle, to care for family. When was the last time anyone in this room had those experiences?" The silence that followed was telling. Samantha finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "I didn't ask for any of this. I was perfectly happy not being in Aldridge." She looked around the table. "But I've seen firsthand how the decisions made in rooms like this affect real people's lives. The employees who lose their jobs when the numbers don't add up. The communities damaged by unchecked development." She turned to Vincent. "You built this company on cutting corners and prioritizing profit over people. That stops now." Vincent held her gaze, something like respect flickering in his eyes. "Yes," he agreed simply. "It does." Walter Pembroke cleared his throat. "While this family reunion is touching, we have a responsibility to our shareholders. The board will need to vote on any leadership change." "Of course," Vincent nodded. "But before you do, you should know that I've already transferred 20% of my personal shares to Samantha. Combined with Liam's holdings, they now control a voting majority." The stunned silence that followed was broken by a slow, appreciative whistle from one of the younger board members. "You outmaneuvered us," Pembroke said, his voice tight with anger. "I protected the company," Vincent corrected, "from those who would dismantle it to save themselves from the coming storm." Liam leaned toward Samantha. "Did you know about this?" he whispered. She shook her head slightly, just as surprised as everyone else. Vincent stood. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a press conference to attend, Liam. Samantha, I believe it's time to introduce Chicago to the new face of Aldridge Enterprises." As they followed Vincent out, Liam muttered, "He's playing us." "Obviously," Samantha replied under her breath. "The question is, for what end?" The elevator descent was silent, tense with unspoken questions. When they reached the lobby, Vincent paused before the doors that would lead them to the waiting press. "Whatever you think of me," he said quietly, looking at both his children, "know that this is the first genuinely selfless thing I've done in my life. Forgive me if I'm skeptical." Samantha replied. Men like you don't suddenly develop a conscience. Not suddenly, no, Vincent agreed. It took losing everything I thought mattered to recognize what actually does. He straightened his tie. Ready? As they stepped toward the press conference, Samantha felt a strange sense of déjà vu, like she was walking into another ambush. Just as she had that night at the restaurant. Only this time, she wasn't a powerless server at the mercy of a tyrant. This time, she was an Aldridge. Whether she wanted to be or not, the cameras flashed as they emerged, momentarily blinding her. When her vision cleared, she saw Vincent approaching the microphones, his public mask firmly in place. The performance was about to begin. Samantha, are you watching this? Eleanor called from the living room of their apartment. 3 months had passed since Vincent's dramatic press conference, and Aldridge news still dominated Chicago headlines. Samantha emerged from the kitchen. Drying her hands on a dish towel, the television showed aerial footage of the former opulent Chicago hotel, the very place where her confrontation with Vincent had begun. Aldridge Enterprises continues its dramatic corporate transformation, the news anchor reported. Today marks the grand reopening of the company's flagship property. Now rebranded as the Matthews Chicago, CEO Samantha Matthews Aldridge calls it the first step in honoring her late mother's legacy while redefining the company's future. The camera cut to Samantha in a tailored suit, standing behind a podium with Liam at her side. The sight was still surreal, seeing herself on television, hearing CEO attached to her name. That blue looks good on you, Eleanor remarked. Her health had improved dramatically with access to specialized treatments, though she still needed supplemental oxygen. Zoe picked it out, Samantha replied, sitting beside her grandmother. Said it projected authority with approachability. Eleanor squeezed her hand. Your mother would be so proud. Would she? Samantha wondered aloud. I'm running the company of the man who abandoned her. Sometimes I wonder if I've betrayed her. You've transformed that company, Eleanor corrected, into something she would have believed in. That much was true. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of 16-hour days, crash courses in corporate governance, and relentless media scrutiny. But alongside Liam, Samantha had implemented sweeping changes, starting with a complete audit of all Aldridge properties and practices. The findings had been worse than anticipated: decades of ethical shortcuts, environmental violations, and worker exploitation had been standard operating procedure. Each discovery had hardened Samantha's resolve to tear it all down and rebuild. And now, live to the ribbon-cutting ceremony at the Matthews Chicago, the reporter announced on screen. Samantha approached a large red ribbon stretched across the hotel's entrance. Beside her stood 20 young people in chef's whites and server uniforms, the first graduating class of the hotel's new culinary training program for disadvantaged youth. This hotel once represented exclusivity and privilege, TV Samantha said into the microphones. Today, it represents opportunity and second chances. Every Aldridge property will now include education and job training programs with guaranteed employment for graduates. The camera panned to the crowd, capturing the mixed reactions. Supporters applauded enthusiastically, while skeptics, including several board members, maintained polite but reserved expressions. She's not winning any friends on the board with these initiatives, Eleanor observed. That's what Liam keeps saying, Samantha agreed. But the public response has been overwhelmingly positive. The Matthews Chicago is fully booked for the next 6 months. Eleanor smiled proudly. And Vincent, how is he handling his daughter's dismantling of his empire? Samantha's expression tightened. From a distance, he's still dealing with the federal investigation, though his cooperation has apparently impressed the prosecutors. The truth was more complicated than Samantha let on. Vincent had indeed stepped back, transferring operational control to his children as promised. But his shadow still loomed large, both within the company and in Samantha's mind. She had rejected his attempts at personal reconciliation while accepting his business guidance, creating a strange, formal relationship that satisfied neither of them. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. That'll be Liam, she said, rising to answer. We have the hospital foundation meeting this afternoon. Liam stood in the hallway, looking every inch the corporate air in his perfectly tailored suit. Only those who knew him well would notice the subtle changes of the past months, the slight shadows under his eyes, the tension he carried in his shoulders. The transformation of Aldridge Enterprises had taken its toll on him too. "Ready for round 2?" he asked with a tired smile. "As ready as I'll ever be," Samantha replied, grabbing her coat. "We're watching your speech," she called to Eleanor. "You look good on camera." "So much for my quiet life," Eleanor called back with a chuckle. In the car, Liam handed Samantha a folder. "Samantha, the latest from legal. The settlement negotiations with the Justice Department are progressing. They're considering our corporate reorganization as a mitigating factor. And Vincent, still looking at potential charges, but his cooperation has helped. The prosecutors seem more interested in the systematic corruption than in making an example of one man." Samantha nodded, flipping through the documents. "And what about the Chicago Foundation deal?" "That's today's battle," Liam replied. "Some board members are pushing back hard against donating the River North property. They see it as throwing away a potential $50 million development opportunity. It's not charity, it's restitution," Samantha said firmly. "That land was obtained through bribes to zoning officials. Turning it into a community health center is the right thing to do." Liam smiled slightly. "You don't have to convince me, but Walter Pembroke is gathering support for a counter-proposal. Let him try," Samantha said, with the quiet confidence she'd developed over the past months. "We still control the voting shares." As they drove through downtown Chicago, Samantha watched the familiar skyline with new eyes. Where once she had seen only towering symbols of wealth and exclusion, she now saw potential. Buildings that could serve communities, create opportunities, make amends for past wrongs. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life," she admitted. 6 months ago, I was serving drinks to people who wouldn't make eye contact with me. "Having second thoughts?" Liam asked carefully. "No," she replied without hesitation. "But I do wonder if we're doing enough, fast enough. The company culture runs deep. For every executive who embraces our vision, there are 3 who are just waiting for us to fail. They'll be waiting a long time," Liam said with conviction. "What we're doing is working, Samantha. The stock has stabilized. New investors are coming on board, ones who value ethical business practices. And our father, where does he stand in all this?" The question hung between them. Vincent had become a complicated figure in both their lives, neither fully redeemed nor completely villainous. "I think he's genuinely proud," Liam said finally, "and regretful. Last week, when I met with him about the federal case, he asked about you. Not about the business, about you, how you were feeling, if you were happy." Samantha looked out the window, uncomfortable with the emotion that information stirred. "I'm not ready to forgive him, Liam. Maybe I never will be." "No one's asking you to," he assured her. "But he is trying, in his way." The car pulled up to the Aldridge Foundation building, where reporters were already gathered on the steps. "Game faces on," Liam murmured, as their driver opened the door. Cameras flashed as they emerged. In the past months, the Matthews-Aldridge siblings had become Chicago's most fascinating public figures. The secret daughter and the loyal son, united in reinventing their father's tarnished legacy. "Ms. Matthews-Aldridge, any comment on the rumors that Walter Pembroke is organizing a shareholder revolt?" a reporter called out. Samantha smiled calmly. "Change is never easy, especially for those who benefited from the old ways of doing business. But Aldridge Enterprises is committed to our new direction, one that values people as much as profit." As they climbed the steps, a familiar figure waited near the entrance. Vincent. He stood apart from the crowd, watching his children approach. Their eyes met briefly, and Samantha felt the now familiar conflicted emotions rise within her. Anger and curiosity, resentment, and a grudging respect. He nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement rather than an attempt at reconciliation. She returned the nod, just as reserved. Some wounds were too deep for easy healing, some betrayals too fundamental for simple forgiveness. But in that small exchange was the acknowledgement of something neither could deny, the blood they shared, and the legacy they were now both part of, for better or worse. 1 year to the day after the wine spilled on Vincent Aldridge's suit, Samantha stood at the podium in the grand ballroom of the Matthews Chicago Hotel. The room, once a temple to excess and exclusivity, now hummed with a different energy as 200 graduates in crisp uniforms awaited their certification from the Matthews Culinary Foundation. 1 year ago, I stood in this very building, Samantha began, her voice steady despite the emotion tightening her throat. "Not at this podium, but behind that door." She pointed to the kitchen entrance. "I was carrying 3 plates and wearing a name tag that read Samantha, because the people I served didn't need to know my last name." A knowing chuckle rippled through the audience. "I never imagined that a simple accident would change my life forever, revealing truths about my past and opening doors to a future I never considered possible." She surveyed the faces before her, young people from Chicago's toughest neighborhoods who had completed the Foundation's intensive 6-month training program. But that's the thing about life-changing moments. They rarely announce themselves. They arrive disguised as disasters, as humiliations, as endings. In the front row, Eleanor sat beside Liam, her oxygen tank discreetly tucked beside her chair. Her health had stabilized over the past year. Not cured, but managed well enough that her good days now outnumbered her bad ones. "Today isn't about me, though," Samantha continued. "It's about you, our first graduating class. You've learned not just culinary skills, but business management, financial literacy, and leadership. Starting tomorrow, 60% of you will begin working in Aldridge properties across the country. The rest have already secured positions with our partner restaurants and hotels." Pride swelled in her chest as she looked at their faces, determined, hopeful, ready to begin careers that could lift them and their families into financial security. "Before I present your certificates, I'd like to introduce the person who made all of this possible through his generous endowment of the Matthews Culinary Foundation." A murmur of anticipation ran through the crowd. The identity of the Foundation's primary benefactor had been kept private until now. Samantha took a deep breath. Vincent Aldridge. A ripple of surprise moved through the audience as Vincent rose from his seat near the back of the room and made his way to the stage. He looked older than he had a year ago, the federal investigation and corporate overhaul taking visible tolls, but he moved with the same confidence, the same inherent authority that had once intimidated Samantha. Now, standing beside him at the podium, she realized she had inherited that same presence, the ability to command a room without raising her voice. "Thank you," Vincent said simply, adjusting the microphone. He surveyed the graduating class. "Congratulations on your achievement. What you've accomplished here will change the trajectory of your lives. And I hope the culture of an industry that has too often undervalued its most essential workers." His gaze shifted to Samantha, something unspoken passing between them. "Sometimes it takes losing everything to understand what truly matters. The Matthews Foundation represents not just my personal commitment to change, but a promise that the mistakes of the past will not define the future of the company that bears both our names now." After the ceremony, as graduates celebrated with their families and new employers, Samantha found herself standing in a quiet corner of the ballroom with Vincent and Liam. "The prosecutor called this morning," Vincent informed them. "The plea agreement is finalized. 2 years probation, significant financial penalties, but no jail time in exchange for my continued cooperation and the corporate reforms you've already implemented." "That's good news," Liam said, clearly relieved. Samantha's reaction was more measured. "And the civil cases?" "Settled," Vincent replied. "The employee compensation fund is fully funded. Payments begin next month." Samantha nodded, satisfied. Justice hadn't been perfect, but it had been substantial. The old Aldridge business practices had been thoroughly exposed and dismantled. The company that remained was smaller, but fundamentally sounder, built on transparency and ethical engagement with employees, communities, and the environment. "I understand Walter Pembroke resigned from the board," Vincent remarked. "Along with 3 others," Liam confirmed. "They're being replaced with people who share our vision for the company's future." An awkward silence fell among the 3 Aldridges. They had spent a year working together professionally while maintaining careful personal boundaries. Vincent had respected Samantha's desire for distance, never pushing for the father-daughter relationship he clearly wanted. "I should check on Gran," Samantha said, preparing to step away. "Actually," Vincent said hesitantly, "I was hoping I might have a word with you, alone." She glanced at Liam, who nodded encouragingly before tactfully excusing himself. Vincent gestured to a small balcony overlooking the Chicago River. Once outside, he seemed to struggle for words, unusual for a man who had built an empire on his persuasive abilities. "I'm leaving Chicago," he said finally, "moving to the West Coast property. The company is in good hands with you and Liam, and my presence here only complicates things. Samantha absorbed this news with surprise. Is that what you really want? What I want, Vincent said carefully, is a chance to know my daughter. But I understand that may never be possible, given our history. Samantha looked out at the city lights reflecting on the river. A year of working alongside Vincent had softened some of her anger, replaced it with a complex mix of emotions she still struggled to define. I have something for you, Vincent continued, reaching into his jacket pocket. Something that belongs to you. He handed her a small, worn photograph. Samantha recognized it immediately. Her mother, young and radiant, laughing at the camera. I kept this all these years, Vincent admitted. It was the only piece of her I allowed myself to hold on to. Samantha traced her mother's face with her fingertip. She never spoke badly of you, you know, even after everything. Gran told me she would just say you had made your choice, and she had made hers. She was always stronger than me, Vincent said softly. You inherited that from her. Samantha tucked the photo carefully into her own pocket. I don't know if I can ever see you as my father, she said honestly, but I'm not opposed to getting to know Vincent Aldridge better. The man, not the mogul. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something neither had expected. A beginning, rather than an ending. I'd like that, Vincent replied, his voice rough with emotion. Back inside, Eleanor watched this exchange from across the room, her heart full. Nancy would have been proud of her daughter's strength, not just in building something new from the ruins of Vincent's empire, but in finding the courage to consider a relationship with the man who had once hurt them so deeply. Liam approached, following her gaze to the balcony. Think they'll work it out? He asked. Eventually, Eleanor replied with the wisdom of years. Some wounds need time, but they're both stubborn in exactly the same way, whether they see it or not. Later, as the celebration wound down, Samantha found herself back in the kitchen where it had all begun, where a simple accident had changed the course of so many lives. The space had been transformed, now serving as both a working restaurant kitchen and a teaching facility for future culinary students. Chef's knife in hand, she skillfully prepared a plate, the same dish she'd been carrying the night she'd collided with Vincent's wine glass. This time, she placed it perfectly before her grandmother, then Liam, and finally, after a moment's hesitation, Vincent. To new beginnings, she said, raising her water glass. As they touched glasses, Samantha realized that while some cycles had completed, others were just beginning. The story of the Aldridges, complicated, imperfect, human, would continue to unfold with new chapters no one could predict. And for the first time in her life, Samantha was ready to embrace that uncertainty, carrying both her mother's resilience and her father's determination into whatever came next.